Good morning, Bernie, and thank you very much for giving up some of your time to talk to the Mint.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, I think it's very exciting talking to you, obviously, at a key moment with the upcoming election in the US, which is getting, of course, a lot of coverage here as well. But I thought the title of your book is very um, uh, striking, Reimagining the American Dream. So maybe starting, why does it need reimagining? What's the key things that have really struck you that gave you the
Absolutely.
title?
Yeah, no, thank you, Henry. Three things really in the book. Number one, um, thank you to America. I felt the need after 51 years of being an American to say thank you. Thank you for letting me in. Thank you for giving me the American dream for me, for my family, for my kids. I've got four kids, four through marriage with three of my own, and six grandkids, and giving us an incredible life, particularly for me, a career in sports and entertainment. Very exciting, very highly competitive business, but an amazing business, and gives me all the blessings that everybody would ever wanted the American dream, and I certainly wanted. Going back to one of my mother's uncles who was Canadian, and one of my dad's cousins who was American, who influenced me as a young boy growing up in Liverpool. So that's number one. Number two, I hate politics, and it's hilarious to think about it. And there's an election going on. Oh, good grief! Election going on that Pew Research says 65% of Americans don't want to vote for either. It's most of it. I'm an independent. I'm in the middle. I'm not extreme right. I'm not extreme left. Why can't we all get along, kind of thing. But um, in those 50 years, parallel to my career chasing the American dream, become more and more socially conscious. Served on numerous boards, charitable boards, and realized just the problems that we've got, and that the dream has faded for so many people. And I think the dream is aspirational, and I think it's inspirational, and I think it brings people together, and I think that's what we're lacking. And then finally, I'm not sure that the dream was ever really there for many people, the poorest of our poor, those who have the least wealth and have typically the least quality education. And in America, sadly, that means minorities. And so those are the three reasons. Thank you. I'm so appreciative of what I've got. And I wanted to say thank you. Number two, I wanted to point out we've got to come back together and unite. And number three, this time around, we've got to make it really attainable for everybody.
Right. So just taking those, I mean, just the first one, yes, to say thank you for letting you in. I suppose one of the things that have sparked the different views is this question of who you let in, is it, after, build the wall.
Immigration. Yeah.
Immigration, hasn't it? So why do you think immigration has become such a big issue given the history of the US?
It's, as you're pointing out in your questions, it's incredibly ironic. We're a nation of immigrants. With the exception of the Native Americans, who, of course, we screwed, pushed out of their homes, stuck them on reservations, and did dreadful things to them. And then, obviously, we brought a whole bunch of slaves over against their will in chains. Our history is a little, what would we say in Liverpool growing up? More than a little dodgy. It's yeah, I know it's not good. And of course, I'm well aware of the city of Liverpool's history in the slave trade.
Yeah.
In the Alabama House where they finally signed the treaty, a lot of things that people just don't know about. So, without a shadow of a doubt, I am incredibly grateful, and I do look at today's situation. And by the way, along with my English wife, she's from Bristol, and our three American kids, we were deported when After finishing my PhD at Kansas, I was on the faculty at the University of Massachusetts and had a 2-year postgraduate study visa to work. And then I had to get a permanent residency. And the Department of Labor in the state of Massachusetts screwed everything up. They didn't want me to get that labor certification. So it was an alien of distinguished merit and ability. The job I applied for was teaching sport business. You had to have a PhD in business. You had to have played or coached at the pro or the college level. I had coached at college level. I had played semi-pro. I had a PhD in business, the only person to qualify. And they eventually got Senator Ted Kennedy to call the head of the Department of Labor and say, stop screwing around and give this guy a certification, which they did. By the time I got it, I then applied to Immigration and Naturalization Service, and the paperwork had run out. So they said, the guy goes, oh my God, I have no choice. You've got 7 days. Get out of the country. I'm so sorry. Reapply in Britain 6 months from now, you can come on back in. I mean, it was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. And so when I see that, and I see where we are as a country today with immigration, and the fundamentals of your question is, we need immigrants in the United States, and at least at 2 levels. At the top level, we need immigrants of distinguished merit and ability, which was the category that I got in under with my permanent residency way back when. And, whether it's AI, technology, medical fields, we need those qualified immigrants, clearly. And that we are processing people under those immigrant visas. Then on the lower end, we need people who are service workers. We need agricultural workers. Why? We need a complete revision of our immigration policy in America, because it's pretty simple. Leave aside the asylum seekers for a second. We need people to pick the fruit and the vegetables in California and in Texas and in all here in Colorado where I live. We need those people. Why not let them in with a bloody immigrant visa, with a work visa? Why not advertise, if you can't get a qualified American, you give them the visa for a year, and at the end of the year, they can renew. So therefore, they're legal.
Yeah, I mean, we're very similar in the UK in the sort of arguments for immigration, but we also know that, the US, the cry of build the wall seemed to galvanize a lot of people. And here, it's seen by many people that Brexit happened because of a sort of anti-immigration. So what is it about immigration that lights people up? What do you think people are scared of, or what? Why are they against it? Because they probably hear all your arguments as well, but there's something obviously there more.
Yeah, well, I think there's 2 extremes. There's Trump and the MAGAs, and they're saying immigrants are raping our young children and murdering people left, right, and center. And the statistics, and that there are some of those cases, and clearly we need to do a better job of policing. The problem we've got right now, here in Denver, Colorado, where I live permanently, we've got 40,000 Venezuelan immigrants. They've got an immigrant gang, a Venezuelan gang that's taken over a high-rise rental apartment building, and all hell broke loose. It's made national news, and it's been taken, I think, somewhat out of context. So you've got that voice on the right-hand side saying all immigrants are evil. And I find that incredibly offensive. It's dead ass wrong, but it's incredibly offensive when you look at what immigrants have done and contributed to this country. You want to go back to Carnegie and all the other people and everything else. The immigrants in this country, Alexander Bell, etc., have been phenomenal. So stop that. That's not true. It's not fair. It's counterproductive. It's unhealthy. It creates a fear and a phobia that shouldn't be there. On the other side, you've got the voice saying, let them all in, immediately give them the vote, give them Social Security, give them full medical coverage. And I don't think that's the answer either. I mean, I don't think I got I mean, I had fantastic help in Kansas. The Midwestern people are the friendliest, warmest people in the world. I mean, obviously, when my ex-wife from England and I got divorced, I married a Midwestern gal, a cheesehead from Wisconsin. I mean, they're just, just amazing, amazing people. So I think there's, like everything else, Henry, most things in life are a balance. They're a nuance. They're not black and white. They're shades of gray and different shades of gray. And really, what we have to teach people is tolerance and understanding and ask questions, listen, form your own judgment, and respect differences of opinion. You don't think the same as I do, that's okay. It's okay. I mean, the only time I voted in the English election was when I was 21. And it was the day before I flew to America to work at a summer camp for the first time. And I voted Liberal in Crosby, very conservative. And my dad, drove back and he said, "You canceled out my vote." And I said to him, as a 21-year-old, "Yeah, and the country gave me that right."
So just picking up then on one of the things you talked about tolerance, didn't you? And I know one of the things you write about is how you feel that a big part of the problem at the moment is that people are not tolerating each other, are not respecting each other. Presuming that reflects a huge amount of underlying anger, do you think, or that's driven this? Where do you think the anger has come from?
I think it comes from several sources. I think the lack of tolerance is one. And, I worked did consulting work for the LA Dodgers, the baseball team in Los Angeles for 18 months, and would fly in for 2 weeks and then fly back out and stay. They put me up in Hollywood. It was just amazing to see La La Land and, go into a nice restaurant and see movie stars there and be able to talk to them. And then, what are you doing? Are you with the Dodgers? Loved your movie of whatever. But it was just amazing during that period of time that I was doing that. And of course, LA is quite skewed left, as you know. And there are people that if you say something, they will just immediately cut you off, and just not necessarily celebrities, just people. And I would drive past on my way to Chavez Ravine, which is where the LA Dodgers Stadium is, the Museum of Tolerance. And I always hated the word tolerance, because to me, to tolerate means you put up with something. You don't really embrace it. You don't
Yeah.
really accept it. You put up with it. And I was never okay with putting up with something. So even though, I've been to several of the museums around the world of the Holocaust, and you think about the ultimate act of human hate, of trying to exterminate a whole people, and genocide, that obviously is a word being thrown out in Gaza right now. And you just look and you go, why can't we all get along? And so what do I think of the causes? First of all, I think people are different. If I look at my 51 years, Henry, in America, my closest friends are all English. As close of friends as we've had and still have, you know, um, from the Midwest, who taught me how to fall in love with America. I mean, here's, one of them. I'll give you my car cost. You need a car rather than getting on the bus. The bus only went one way clockwise. And so you would take the bus to the store in 5 minutes, and it would take 45 minutes to walk back,
Right.
I mean, with groceries, so you'd have to go to the store twice a week because you couldn't carry that many groceries, my ex-wife and I. Simple stuff, things like that. But I think people are comfortable with people like them, which is why there are ghettos, which is why people of ethnic groups all, flock together for their same culture. And even though it's England and similar language, was a lot more different in those days, in terms of the expressions than it is today. I think that's it. I think the social media plays a really nasty part in it. And I think too many people are isolated, going into their own little caves of social media where they just stir up the pot. So whether it's Islamophobia, which is a big part of it, my drive when I was at the NBA in New York and had a driver who took me to meetings and took me to the airports because I was on a plane every single day flying to one of our teams because my job was in charge of marketing for the league and team business, all 30 teams. And he was a Muslim, and Isa Dawud, a beautiful man, who taught me what a jihad was, what an infata was, and all of these things that you'd hear these words and go, Isa, what is it really? What is a jihad? What is your spiritual duty? And he'd say, my brother died, and his wife and 3 kids. I send them $500 every month, and they live on that $500. She can be a full-time mom, and all kids can go to school. That's a jihad. That's your spiritual duty. It's not killing every infidel, and an infidel is anybody who's non-Muslim, which is how it's been interpreted. So do your research, do your homework, ask the questions, listen, and realize that a good Muslim is a good Muslim. I mean, that, okay, they believe in Muhammad, in 600s. Why the hell they want to fight versus the promised land, which we believe was given by God to the Jews thousands of years before later on, there was even a Muslim race, but the Philistines or whoever it was. And, that's the kind of depth that I've gone into in doing the research, and Paul Skade, my ghostwriter, have gone into looking at this stuff to go, there is no answer. There is no simple answer to the two-state solution on stuff like that. And then all the trickle down. And how does that come to college campuses where professors on college campuses are encouraging the students to block the Jewish students going to class? And how is that okay?
But is it,
I can.
I mean, you were talking about all the work you did to try and understand these things, and obviously the key thing is that there are lots of people around who don't, who jump to conclusions, or immediately they are. I mean, the term often used is, isn't it, to other people, to put people into a bracket they're not quite human, or and the language of that people use in those and historically used to describe Jews and to describe other minorities as less than human. And I suppose the question then is why do people have no, why are they in that, because it's a sort of state of mind. Are you in a state where you're reaching out and listening to people and open to people? Or are you in a state of anger and wanting to lash out at people? That's, how do you change that? Because you've had experience, haven't you, working with different groups and trying to cross those, get people to change that sort of mindset.
I don't think it's any different from, well, first of all, I'll get to a very specific recommendation in the book, which is the boot camp for rising freshmen. So kids age 13, 14 years old going into high school. I'll get back to that in a second. But it's no different from when I was at Lancaster Polytechnic, now Coventry University, and we had Gerald Nabarro, NAB 1 with his Rolls Royce, showing up, and all the left-wing students, particularly a lot of the Pakistani students that were at the university, were protesting, wouldn't let him speak, versus Tariq Ali, who I forget who the hell he was, but he was some he was in charge of a left-wing group, I think may have been Pakistani ethnicity, and was very, very left-wing. And I and some of the other middle of the road people sat there. I want to hear him. I want to hear what he's got to say. I want to make my own opinion of whether he's right or wrong. I don't want to shout him down. And so we still have that today. We have Democratic Party to the left, supposedly the party of free speech, shouting down free speech. That makes no sense to me. No wonder Robert F. Kennedy's like, this ain't the party of my father and my uncle, you know. And I'm an equal instigator of saying the right ain't right and the left ain't right.
But actually,
Yeah.
let's I mean, because actually it's quite tricky to say. I was just thinking about extremism and what counts as extreme, and obviously it's quite variable, isn't it? So here, the National Health Service is core. Anyone who suggests the National Health Service is a bad thing would be considered an extremist, whereas in the US, anyone who promotes the National Health Service would be seen as left-wing, extremist. And if you look at things like the women's vote, back in the beginning of the 20th century, if you supported women's vote, you were an extremist. Now, of course, it's the reverse, and you can think of loads of examples of that. So
yeah, well, there's loads of examples. I mean, transgenderism and all the other stuff. I mean, it's what the problem. One of the major problems we've got in the United States is the mainstream media is skewed way left, and so when we took away the fairness doctrine in the 80s, and we allowed you to be as biased as you want to be, and the CNN went way left, Fox went way right. Fox won the rating wars and beat the what out of CNN. CNN had to come back to the middle because they were ridiculous to the left. So the fairness doctrine, I don't know that we need a fairness doctrine, but we need some independent agency, and there are one. I was watching one of 60 Minutes last night, and where this guy, his career is to give scores of how fair the media are, in what they say. I mean, I'll give you one example. In the election, it's constantly referred to that Joe Biden created more jobs than any other president, in modern history. Well, he didn't. He brought back, and I wouldn't say he brought back, I would say the economy brought back the jobs that were all laid off during COVID, once COVID had been somewhat under control. And so that's a common load of BS that is out there. And, I mean, obviously,
BS
Trump.
from all directions, isn't it? And of course, different organizations pick up different things. And of course, the mainstream media have also lost all their resources, haven't they, to check anything and do anything. So they just reel out whatever comes in. I mean,
yeah, they got lazy. They got lazy, and I mean, you tell
they
a lie
lost their
often
advertising sources to the likes of Google, etc., didn't they?
Exactly. Well, one of the biggest problems with the media, mainstream media and cable media and social media and the internet, is that if it bleeds, it leads. And I forget who it was, famous publisher years ago that came up with that quote, but probably Hearst, Randolph Hearst. But it's crazy that we all know. I mean, I'm a marketer, and I know doggone well, you piss somebody off, you piss off one of your customers, you're going to get them telling 10 people. You do a great job and really thrill one of your customers, they'll tell 3 people. So the anger emotion, as you pointed out, Henry, is way stronger than the satisfaction or the joy emotion, unfortunately. And that's part of human life. So what we have to do, and in the book, the recommendation to try and turn this around is to get 13-year-olds at puberty, as they're rising into high school, is an 8-week sleepaway camp. And we use the military camps that have been mothballed and other government facilities. And we take them for 8 weeks. And that's how I came to America, to be a summer camp counselor, eventually being the head counselor and running the camps. I know how to do this. I know how to put it together. And what we do is we say to the kids, you've got 8 weeks to learn how to be an adult. And you've got 8 weeks to get some grit, and life ain't easy. It's not easy, but we'll pay you, and we'll pay you the minimum wage, and we'll follow this boot camp experience where you'll get up in the morning and do exercise. You will learn how to cook meals. You will physically prep the food for all the other campers. Every other day, you'll do one of the meals. You'll come away with 8 breakfasts, lunches, and dinners that are really healthy, that you know how to cook, that you can bring back. So if you're in a single parent family living in the inner city in a food desert where mom thinks Monday's McDonald's, Tuesday's Domino's, and Wednesday's, instead you can learn how to cook healthy food. So that the foundation, I'm switching a little bit now, but the foundation I created where we give money. So all the proceeds from my book, my consulting go to the Aspire Difference Foundation for single parents of preschool kids, with the goal being those kids go into preschool able to read and write. Because the research shows that by 3rd grade, if you're not reading at 3rd grade level, you will be behind and you are 5 times more likely to go to jail, to get teenage pregnancy, substance abuse, booze or drug or whatever, and social problems. So we try and get them on the front end. And as John F. Kennedy says, not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for it. Here's your responsibility. And you're going to work for 4 years. So you'll do the boot camp, you'll do one company, one charity, one government agency. By 18, you'll know if you want to go to college, what you want to do with your major. You'll have 25,000 with interest in the bank. We will have created generational wealth in half a generation for these kids to buy their own apartment or to build their own entrepreneurial business. If they go to college, if they've done that for 4 years, they get 4 years free in college. So $15,000 a year at today's rates, free or professional certification as an electrician, plumber, beautician, esthetician, whatever. No student debt.
Yeah.
Student created generational wealth in that period of time, and taking the kids out of the summer, out of this inner city in the summer, when they get involved in all the social problems that they get involved in as young teenagers. And instead, no. Black, brown, yellow, you're all together in the camp. You're all getting along. Rich, poor, doesn't matter. You're all getting along. And this is America.
Can I just, because you said single parents. I mean, because I was wondering about how you build bridges between these different groups who seem to shout and sort of hate each other and so forth. So this proposition you said at one point was just single parents, so it's people in poverty and so forth. What about the rich?
Sorry. I switched in the middle and confused you, Henry. The charity that I've created that is the recipient from all of my work is single parents with preschool kids as a target population that is the most vulnerable. Right. The boot camp is every kid, rich, poor, black, brown, yellow, every kid in America. Eventually, you would like to see it be a mandatory conscription like it was, at 18 or 19 when you went off to a military boot camp. This is not military. This is social studies boot camp, and this is everybody has to get along. And it's designed at age 13 that, hey, I'm no different from you. I just happen to be wealthy, or I happen to not be in the city, and I have the same dreams you have. And if we've done the job starting back in preschool, where we've got you into kindergarten able to read and write, you won't fall behind and you won't stay behind. And that's the idea of it.
I mean, I can see where you're coming from. I want to just, and that's very interesting and initiative. I wonder if we could just link back to the reimagining America's dream, because my understanding there is that you wanted to move from an individualistic emphasis to the American dream to one which was more about community and connecting this, which traditionally, I suppose, you might associate more with Europe, or has been.
Yes.
That is a big move, isn't it? I mean, to go from, the individual of the cowboy out there on the, being alone and and competing with others, winning, etc. I mean, it's a big element, isn't it? You too can become a billionaire or whatever. How can you shift that to to a sort of more idea of collectiveness and community?
Well, I think it is a complex. It's a very complex move, and I've spent my career in marketing, changing people's behavior, but getting them to become a fan of or part of a community of a sports team, and it's very different, and that's a hell of a sight simpler. You get them excited about the athletes, the players, the team, and then the community. I in Atlanta, I was part of '85 Atlanta Evertonians, the idiots that went to an Irish pub on a Saturday morning in downtown and all watched our games together and cheered, and usually didn't cheer knowing Everton, given that they were so bad, unfortunately. But it's very different. And what we're trying to do here is several things. And one of the complex problems is everybody in America is focused on and in this shift left, which I'm not criticizing, I'm making as a statement. The shift left, it's about equality. And America is not about equality. And for me to say that, it's like heresy. Okay, so let me back up and back up what I'm saying. First of all, under the eyes in the book, we call it, the divine force, or the most powerful force of the universe. I don't care what people believe in. I'm a Catholic Christian, but that's fine. That's me. That's who I am and what I am. People can believe in this, they can be atheistic, they can be whatever they want to be. I'm fine with that. Perfectly okay, and accept that and understand that. But we believe that there is a divine force that created the universe, and that person created us all equal. That is a fallacy, because we're not all equal. Every one of us was born with different gifts. We've got different sexes, different sizes, different looks, different appearances, different interests, different skills. LeBron James, the phenomenal basketball player, is this incredible basketball player. I wanted to be Pele, Maradona, whatever. I wasn't good enough. I tried out for Blackpool and didn't make it. At age 15, it was like, okay, son, you're an okay footballer and you can play semi-professional in the National League, as it's called now in England. Isthmian League when I played in it. You aren't that good. Okay. So I've got different skills. Now, I dare to say that as good as LeBron James is, he's not as good a sports marketer as I am. He may think he is, but he isn't. Okay. and so that's something I got that he didn't get, and he got a hell of a lot that I didn't get. So we're all chasing equality. We're chasing the wrong stuff. I believe in the eyes of God we're all equal, 100%. I believe in whoever you believe the creator of the universe is, we're all equal. I believe under the law we are all equal. I believe all of that, but really what we're trying to do is give everybody the chance to maximize their talents, to use the skills they're given, which are very different from person to person, and maximize those. And we're trying to get young people to accept, I have big bones. I will always be overweight or fighting to be overweight. That's my DNA. That's who I am. So how do I look in the mirror as a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, and brush my teeth and go, I know what God gave me, or I know what the creator of the universe gave me, and I know what they didn't give me. How do I work with what I've got? And it's really the answer back to your question, Henry, is too many people can't accept who they are, what they've got, and what they don't have.
But that's still
and get on with it,
Yeah. But that's still looking at people very much as an individual. I can see
Right.
planning, and of course you also you
Um,
could add to that some people are born with a silver spoon, and some, etc., etc. But what you seem to be saying that you wanted to reach towards community and connectedness, which seems to be a different thing.
Much so. Yeah. And there, um, I think why that's evolved in my thinking, Henry, is that um, given up trying to cure the whole world. I don't think I can cure the whole world. I think a community could cure the whole world? Yes, but I think you start small and then it goes bigger across the United States and then possibly across the world. So what I've recommended in the book is each of us, and it's not ideal, but I think it's a solution. How do you deal with the craziness of today's world? Where you're turning on the TV, where you're going on social media, and you're realizing that a 14-year-old kid with mental problems is killing two teachers and two kids in Winder, Georgia, which is where my company used to have its retreats. Is in that town, 45 minutes north of Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, it's just horrific. I mean, understand that in my life, um, my kids went to Chatfield High School, which is the rival to Columbine. I lived 3 miles away from Columbine High School when the Columbine massacre happened. I was in my NBA office in Manhattan, looking out the window, seeing the first plane hit, seeing the second plane hit, seeing both towers collapse. I mean, I've lived that. Um, and so, what's the solution? I don't know that it's the perfect solution, but it's a solution. And that is look at the bubble. So, live your life like a four-legged stool. Have four legs upon which your life is based so that it's stable. And at least you're stable. And the bubble that you build is a good bubble. And that's all you can focus on is making it a good bubble. What does that mean? Number one, the first leg on the stool is value system. Have a value system you won't compromise. You won't lie. Honesty and integrity are non-negotiables. They're non-negotiables. They are absolutes, which I was so blessed to have my dad, teach me that. So 6 years old, we with a neighborhood boy who was 8, scale over the fence into Auntie Anne's backyard. We steal apples. We eat apples. Middle of the afternoon, I throw the apples up all over the tile floor in the kitchen because they're baking apples. I don't know what baking apples are. You can't eat them without cooking them. Okay. Mom goes, where the heck did you get all those apples? Malcolm Reed got them. Okay. Well, where did Malcolm Reed get them? I don't know. Okay. Well, he didn't. Okay. So eventually dad comes home, takes me to Malcolm Reed, finds out that I'm the one that suggested Etienne's backyard. So I get 2 whacks of the belt on my bare butt for lying, for stealing, 2 for lying, and 2 for blaming Malcolm Reed. Very young age. I don't steal. I mean, I wouldn't think about stealing, right? That is not being taught. How do those values get taught? In terms of what are the integral values. First leg of the stool. Second leg of the stool is family. And it's F.A.M.I.L.Y. Which stands for forget about me, I love you. Family. Family first. I am the patriarch of 16 people, 4 kids, 6 grandkids, their partners. Okay. We even have my ex-wife's daughter from another marriage who lives in Denver. She's part of our family. Hannah is part of our family. Okay. That's our family. When we do family things, they all come together as family. And it's my responsibility to make sure they live the American dream as head of the household. Number 3, career, vocation, whatever it is. Mine has been sports marketing. It's been building fan communities. It's, whether it was working for the Colorado Rockies, the Pirates, the NBA, the Atlanta Hawks, didn't matter, or my own company selling tickets for well over 50 properties worldwide. It was always highest integrity, great product, good quality, product, and we were good in our communities. We gave back to our communities. And finally, the fourth leg is the community. What have I done to make my community a better place to live and work today? I think if people will focus on that, so that they most important thing is my values, my family, my job, my career, what it is I'm doing to make the world a better place, what I'm doing to make the community a better place. That I think is the orientation. It's very micro, but I think it's micro that allows them to build macro from that.
Well, let's take you then to a macro issue finally, because it's something you, on a search of your book, you didn't say much about, and that is climate change or climate justice, because I suppose people will say maybe that the American dream is part of the ever expanding activity and consumption, and that leads to the fact that there are a lot of people around the world, particularly in Asia and Africa and so forth, where the place is going to become unlivable because we're already about 1.5 degrees. We already have examples of days in the year where you cannot exist outdoors. It kills people. The heat kills people. So where is the responsibility there? And and how do you address that sort of issue, given that, I mean, at one point you talk about growing the pie, and it's much easier to hand out a growing pie, whereas effectively, maybe with climate change, the pie has to reduce, because by taking a bigger pie in the US, you're destroying the ability to other people around the world to live.
It is an area that I feel bad about that we ducked. We didn't duck it completely, but we ducked it for the most part. And I think Paul was the one that pushed this, and rightfully so. It's like how thin do you want to go in terms of all the points? And it was certainly one of the top 10 social issues that Pew Research and voters have pointed to. And what I tried to say was, I don't understand why climate change has been so politicized, and the right say there is no climate change, and the left says, there is climate change, because it's obvious there's climate change. And my point was, who does not want clean water to drink for them or their families? Who does not want clean air to breathe for them and their families? So surely to goodness, in terms of responsible production, we can produce what we need to live and have the quality of life and live the American dream without having to destroy the environment. And I think that we as Americans have to bear a very big burden for that. I also think big industrial nations like India and China, at least the arguments in this country would be that they're not doing their fair share, that we have improved, but I don't think we've improved super substantially in terms of our Environmental Protection Agency and the things that we could do, should do, and in fact must do, because our responsibility for the planet has got to be right up there with everything else. Sustainability, whether it's fossil fuels, not fossil fuels. And I do think that part of the problem is people like AOC with their Green New Deal that isn't realistic and sustainable. I mean, California can say we're going to have nothing but electric cars in California by 2030, but the electric grid can't sustain it. And they're not willing to have nuclear power. So how the hell are you going to sustain all the cars in California? I mean, Gavin Newsom last week had to announce, those of you with electronic cars, please don't charge them. Please don't charge them for a few days. We need relief on the power grid. It's problematic, I think.
Well, I mean, the problem there could be, pretty fundamental. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of the concept of return on energy investment. where you look at, how much energy you have to put in to get energy out as such. And
Yep.
obviously, for the last couple of 100 years, our energy has been very cheap in terms of energy in, energy out, 100, 200 times, it just flows. Whereas with renewable energy, of course, you have a much more expensive set of energy in terms of energy in and energy out. And whatever the price is at the moment, and it's cheaper, but which obviously is a very complex situation. But we're sort of moving into an era where energy and maybe food, the sort of fundamental things that we rely on, are going to become a lot more expensive. As the climate degrades, and it becomes much less easy to grow things. We have that sort of crisis that we're facing. I mean, I suppose that might argue even more for a shift in the reimagining the American dream to actually, how can you have a resilient society in a increasingly unfriendly climate?
It absolutely has to be at the heart of the community that you bring it down. I think it's both micro and macro. I think it's like a lot of things in life. It does oscillate up and back, and I think that um, focusing on it on the local community level, right there at that level. I'm not suggesting that all our food is grown at the local level, because it clearly isn't, and shipped all over the place. I mean, to me, it's like listening to some of the politicians of, do you realize that one of the single biggest inflation costs in our food in the last 3.5 years of the Biden administration has been transportation? And your shift towards away from fossil fuels makes sense in the long run. But I think what Britain did by saying, to the power companies, in 2000, 1% of your fossil fuel, 1% of your fuel supply has to come from renewable energy. And in 2001, or 2002, it's 2%, 2003, it's 3%, etc. Makes sense. I mean, that may be too slow. It needs to be done in, say, 35 to 50 years, not 100 years. But that we have to be self-sustainable, and that we can't just keep on going and growing and growing and growing without it being exactly what you say, which is to get to the core of it. Um, I I question, quite frankly, the amount of power, fossil fuel, that is used to create the batteries in electric vehicles. I would love to see a really good, um, scientific, accurate, thorough analysis of what does it cost to create one of those batteries for a
Well, I think
Tesla.
we do actually include that in assessments, but obviously a lot of the renewable infrastructure is based on existing fossil fuels to build it, and that will
Of course.
continue. But
Yeah,
I,
that will continue.
I want to end actually with a final question. Who's going to win the election in the US?
I don't know. I don't know. I am, um, yeah, if I had to put money, um, today I would put money on Trump, because I think that I don't want to vote for either of them, and I won't vote for either of them personally. Um, and
You're
I'm
not
not
following
certain.
Cheney in saying
Yeah,
good conservatives.
no, and I won't vote for Kamala because, you know, I'm a believer in the system, and she hasn't gone through the rigor of the system, not for her own fault, but I mean, she tried and she lost out very quickly and very early. I don't think she's a rigorous campaigner. Um, I don't like the, hey, my values haven't changed. Um, okay, I think it's great. It's one of my philosophies. You change, Kamala, but your policies have. And so I don't know that I can 100% trust you. Most of my family probably will vote for Kamala, as my guess. I've got plenty of friends and relatives who will vote for Trump because they think he'll be better for the U.S. economy. And I think that a lot of people don't tell the pollsters what their real opinion is, which is why he always underpolls and then overproduces to a certain degree. And I think the polling is in the margin of error. That I also think that we'll see what happens tomorrow night. With the debate.
Yeah.
I don't think she'll melt down like Biden did. Um, and I fully suspect that he could go off on one of his rants. But I mean, it's in his hands. If he could stay on message and just as a marketer, I sit there and go, now how can you be the party of change when you're the incumbent?
That's right.
How are
But
you,
what about
how are you
Trump?
pulling
I
that
mean,
off?
the accusation that because most of the Cheney view is the two Cheneys, father and daughter, is that Trump, has shown that he cannot be trusted to safeguard the Constitution, and which is presumably more fundamental a risk in terms of the future of the United States.
But I think the government can be trusted to protect the Constitution, and
In
including
spite
the
of Trump,
Supreme.
in spite of
Yeah,
Trump,
despite Trump, just like last time. Just like
that's
last
good.
time, Pence wasn't going to go in there and change the vote, in terms of affirming the election. And people can give the Supreme Court all kinds of stick, which they've done, over Roe v. Wade and some of these other decisions, which are monumental decisions. I agree, but generally speaking, I think the Supreme Court would not allow Trump to get away with it. I mean, we're not going to have a Maduro Venezuela situation. I don't think. I hope
Right.
not. We can't, we
Well, you're
can't,
willing
we
to
can't
take the
afford it.
risk.
I'm sorry.
You're willing to take the risk.
I don't think I have any choice. Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's beyond my control, and the only thing that's in my control is to focus on my family. I'm blessed to have my eldest daughter is a doctor of Chinese medicine, a thriving business in Asheville, North Carolina, treating people and making them well. My middle daughter is a deputy district attorney who just put a pimp in jail for 448 years for 18 indictments, and my son is a property manager for a wealthy family, keeps all their property safe, and that's all I can do, I think, Henry.
Okay, well, we'll probably have to leave it there. But thank you very much, Bernie,
Oh, thank you.
for that time.
No, thank you. Really great to get to know you, and I will be following Mint magazine and doing the interviews on a regular basis.
Yep.
Really sincerely appreciate you giving me the time.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you. Take care. God bless. Say hi to your Liverpool friends.